Rise and fall. We're teaching through the Old Testament book of 1 Kings. It's the story of Solomon. So far, Solomon has lived a pretty God-honoring life. You know, when he was asked what he most wanted in the world, his answer was wisdom. When he began to accumulate wealth, his first act was to build a lavish temple for the Lord. And once it was completed, he didn't brag about it, he didn't boast about it. He got on his knees and he offered one of the longest prayers found in the entire Bible. So Solomon, good man, God-honoring man. Today, we get to 1 Kings chapter 11. In 1 Kings chapter 11, we get this, verse 7. On a hill east of Jerusalem, Solomon built a high place for Chemosh, the detestable god of Moab, and for Moloch, the detestable god of the Ammonites. What? I mean, the first 10 chapters. Solomon, he's like knocking it out of the park. How does this happen? How does a man who builds a lavish temple for the Lord, how does a man who asks God, I most want wisdom, how does he get there? 1 Kings chapter 11 is one of the infamous chapters in the Bible. It begins with this, verse 1. King Solomon, however, loved many foreign women. Love. Really? I think a more accurate word might be desired. You know, and desire, it can be a very good thing. We wouldn't survive very long without natural desire for things like food and water. But desire, it is dangerous because if it is not controlled, it can take over. I start to feel like I must have it. I start to feel like I'm incomplete without it. I start to feel like I'm unfulfilled without it. Desire doesn't ask what is good. Desire doesn't ask what is right. Desire doesn't ask what is best. Desire is focused on one thing and one thing only. I want. I want. I want. This is an Oreo cookie. And if you're getting excited for communion, because I saw I got it from table, no, these aren't going to be available at communion stations, okay? Oreo cookie. Kids like Oreos. We could appeal the logic and we could say, well, this really isn't good for you. You know, your body needs proteins and minerals. This has none of those. Sugar and high fructose corn syrup and chocolate and oil and nitrates, those are not the 5 basic food groups. But a kid would say, but I want it. It would make me happy. And if I don't get it, I will make you unhappy. This desire is like that. Desire, it's a strong internal feeling that's not always connected to what is good. Paul encourages the followers of Jesus to do this in Ephesians 4:22. He says, put off your old self, which is being corrupted by its deceitful desires. Deceitful desires. What Paul is teaching here, he's saying some of the things in us, they seem good to us, but they are not good for us. See, desire, it narrows our thinking to what do I want? We can make our decisions and our choices in life based on our desire, or we can make our decisions and our choices in life based on wisdom. Wisdom asks, what is good here? Wisdom asks, what is right here? Wisdom asks, what is best here? With wisdom, getting what I want, when I want it, is not the most important thing. I am willing to put up with some unfulfilled desire in pursuit of a higher and a deeper life. I don't just live on impulse, right? I consider options. I consider long-term consequences. I consider biblical teaching. The way of wisdom asks, what is good? The way of desire asks, what do I want? And those are not always the same thing. So when wisdom and desire conflict, which one gets a higher priority in your life? That's a very important question. That's one of the most important questions in life. So I'm going to ask it again. When wisdom and desire conflict, which gets a higher priority in your life? Solomon, he chose desire. Verse 2. Nevertheless, Solomon held fast to them in love. He had 700 wives. 700 wives. Can you imagine that? You know, the other day, we had a household plant die. So my wife, Sarah, she wanted to replace that one plant with 2 new plants. But I'm the man of the house, so let me tell you what we did. We got 2 new plants. 700 wives. How does that even work? How did he keep up with all the birthdays and anniversaries? Did he even know all their names? Mike, imagine, be like, have we met? Are we married? 700 wives. That's not all. The passage continues, tells us this. He had 700 wives of royal birth and 300 concubines. Well, what's a concubine? Have you heard of a friend with benefits? This is just the benefits. That's what it is, which brings us to everybody's very favorite topic to talk about in church, sex. That's part of what this is about. Yay. You know, every once in a while, I enjoy nerding out to some kind of a nature show, nature documentary. So the other day I was watching one and it showed this. It's a peacock. And I learned that peacocks have very consistent mating patterns. Here's what they do. They spread their tail feathers, they dance, then they make these loud, obnoxious noises. At no point in this mating ritual does the bird say, you know, I just really need to know that you want me for more than just my body. That's not a part of it. They don't mate and then cuddle and then talk about building a life together. They don't do it. For them, it's just biology. It's just propagation of their species. You and I, we are different. Sex for us, well, it's different. At least it's supposed to be, because we have been made in the image of God. The word that God consistently uses in the Bible for sex, it's this word. It's pronounced yada. Sometimes that is translated to lie with, but literally it means to know. To know. Why that word? I think God intentionally uses that word because he's teaching us sex isn't just biology. It's not just having a good time. We are more than animals. We are more than physical beings that are led through life by our primal impulses. Yada, to know. God is saying there is a vulnerability. There is a knowing that is extremely intimate. Each one revealing and giving the most sacred part of their lives to the other. Bible, page 2. Genesis chapter 2, verse 22. Then the Lord God made a woman from the rib he had taken out of the man, and he brought her to the man. The man said, "This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, for she was taken out of man." See, God is not anti-sex. He's the one who thought of it. He's the one who created it. He came up with the idea. God's the one who created male and female and included the gift of sex for one man with one woman in a lifelong covenant of marriage. Can you imagine if that's the way it actually played out? I mean, wouldn't it be freeing? Wouldn't it be freeing not to have people stalking you just because they want to hook up? One partner for life, emotional intimacy, physical intimacy, spiritual intimacy, faithfulness, trust. That's God's design, and it's a beautiful thing. Well, the National Health Council, and this is not a Christian organization, but the National Health Council, recently they conducted the most extensive research project on sex in America that has ever been done. And here's one of their conclusions. Maybe one of the more significant ones was this. They concluded that the people who are experiencing the highest level of sexual satisfaction in life, married couples. They weren't anticipating that. And then they discovered that sexually active singles were experiencing the highest levels of problems and the lowest level of pleasure. According to this secular study, your very best chance at a great sex life is to have the fewest number of sexual partners. Does that sound kind of familiar? Sometimes people say, "Oh, well, the Bible, that's kind of old, that's kind of outdated." No, it's not. It's old, but it's not outdated. We got modern studies going out today that are validating these ancient truths. Here's what it shows us. God is not against us. God is for us. He wants what's good for us. If you've already, crossed that line, this isn't about shame. This isn't about guilt. Whatever you are, wherever you are with this particular issue, consider making a commitment to trust this area of your life to the way of the Lord from this day forward. He designed it. He created it. He knows how it works best. And I think you will like the person that you become. Well, verse 3, he had 700 wives of royal birth and 300 concubines, and his wives led him astray. A warning. I'm going to do something a little unorthodox here. Solomon is generally considered to be a man who fell because of sexual addiction. And 1,000 women is some serious libido. But I think that there is a lot more going on here in this chapter than that. If we look at this closely, the Bible gives us two clues. Okay, here's the first one. It's back in chapter 3, verse 1. It tells us Solomon made an alliance with Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and married his daughter. Why did Solomon marry the daughter of Pharaoh? Well, not because of sex. It was because of an alliance. This was kind of a common thing back in those days. In ancient times, kings would marry the daughters of other kings, and that was a way to create peace between those two nations. Here's the second clue. It's in chapter 11, verse 3. He had 700 wives of royal birth and 300 concubines. What does the Bible tell us about these 700 wives? It tells us just one thing about them. They were of royal birth. That means the vast majority of them, they were princesses, daughters of kings of other nations. See, I don't think that Solomon's harem. His massive harem is just because he's an out-of-control sex fiend. I think Solomon, I think he wanted protection. I think he wanted security. I think he was developing strategic alliances. That doesn't justify it, but it does help explain it. Years earlier, before Solomon was king, before Solomon was even born, God gave these instructions to anyone who would become king of Israel. It's found in Deuteronomy 17:17, and you better believe every king knew about this passage in the Bible. He says this, he, talking about the king, must not take many wives, or his heart will be led astray. He must not accumulate large amounts of silver and gold. Well, Solomon, he did both of those things. Solomon, he knew, but Solomon, he didn't trust God's word. Solomon, he didn't trust God's way. I imagine that he could rationalize it. So, well, 700 wives. He was probably able to say, well, yeah, I'm doing that for strategic alliances. I'm doing this for the nation. I got a reason behind this. I imagine that he could probably justify it. He could say, well, look around. All the other kings, every single one of them, they're all doing this. See, don't just reduce the fall of King Solomon to being some kind of wild frat boy who was led through life on the leash of his primal desires. Because sin can be a whole lot sneakier than that. I don't think anybody wakes up and thinks, today is going to be the day. Today is going to be the day I ruin my life. Well, no. It starts slowly. It starts incrementally. It starts subtly. A little indiscretion here, a small indiscretion there. It's not typically one big dramatic event. It starts with small, incremental decisions, but it inevitably grows. Several people take credit for this quote, so I don't know who to attribute it to, but I think it's a pretty good quote. Let me share it with you. It says this: sin always takes you farther than you want to go, keeps you there longer than you want to stay, and costs more than you want to pay. Yeah. One day you can wake up and think, well, what happened? How did I get here? How did I get so far off? Well, here's how. It wasn't just one failed dramatic moment. It doesn't happen all at once. It's sneakier than that. How does it happen? It happens one small step at a time. Yeah, I think that a passage like 1 Kings chapter 11 is in the Bible. We see Solomon, he messed up, he blew it, he fell. I think one of the reasons this is in the Bible is it's God's way of inviting us to do a little self-reflection. To say, well, how about me? Is that something that's happening in me? And here's a question for self-reflection. You can just don't have to tell anybody about it. Just ask yourselves, am I stepping away from God in any area? And it might be a real small step. It might be step number 1. Or maybe for you, it's like step number 38,521. Is there any place in your life where you are stepping away from the way of the Lord? And maybe it's simple. Maybe you're just not spending time with Him. Because it's pretty easy to drift when you're not connecting. Or maybe it's lust. You say, well, I don't have 700 wives and 300 concubines. But maybe you have a digital, a visual harem. Maybe you're caught up in pornography. Or maybe it's greed, always wanting a little bit more. Maybe it's pride. I got this. I can handle this. Or maybe it's entitlement. I deserve this. Or dishonesty. I can spin this. Or apathy. I'm only going to do things that I'm comfortable with. Or anger. I blow up on people. Where are you most prone to step away from the Lord? Have the courage to be honest about it, because you're only as strong as you are honest. If you are stepping away from God, what should you do? If you're stepping away from the Lord in any way, whether it's step number 1 or step number 42,321, what do you do? Well, the answer is simple and it's profound at the same time. If you are stepping away from the Lord, you should turn around. Turn around, turn around, turn around. Go in the other direction. It's not too late. It's that simple. And here's the deal. When you do that, when you turn around, you know who will be right there waiting for you? Well, God. He will be there waiting for you because he is that good. Well, 1 Kings chapter 11, the infamous fall of King Solomon. I think the key verse is not the most famous verse. This one, verse 3, he had 700 wives of royal birth and 300 concubines. I think the key verse is the next one, verse 4. His heart was not fully devoted to the Lord his God, as the heart of David his father had been. And this, in verse 6, he did not follow the Lord completely. Following Jesus isn't a decision to believe something about God. Following Jesus is a commitment to trust Jesus, to let him lead, to follow his ways, to follow his teachings, to follow his commands, the ones we like and the ones we don't like, when we feel like it and when we don't feel like it. Following Jesus isn't knowing the right things. Following Jesus is actually doing the right things. Following Jesus isn't theoretically agreeing with something. Following Jesus is trusting someone. Following Jesus isn't inviting Jesus to bless my plans and to bless my agenda. Following Jesus is inviting him to establish my plans and my agenda. Well, why? Why would anyone do that? I mean, we're free. We're independent. We're autonomous. Why would anyone give him that kind of influence? Why would anyone give him that kind of authority in life? I'll show you why. Because of this. Jesus took a loaf of bread and he said, well, this is my body. You've heard that. What does that mean? What is that about? I think that was Jesus' way of saying, Solomon wasn't the only one who messed up. Solomon's not the only one who's fallen. Solomon's not the only one who sinned. I have. You have. And God's been very clear from day one what the wages of sin are. He said, well, the wages of sin is death. It's separation from God. And God's good. He doesn't want that for you. And so he says, I'm going to provide another option for you. You can pay that price or I will pay it for you. So Jesus took the loaf of bread and he broke it, saying, this is my body. Jesus knew what was going to happen the next day. He knew about the cross. He didn't leave. He didn't run away. He came for that. My body broken for you. This is Jesus saying, I know where you've been. I know what you've done, but I'm still here. I got you covered. I will forgive you. I will pay your price. I will cover the cost. I will pay the debt. Shame gone. We can be forgiven fully, freely, completely. And then he took the cup and he said, well, this represents my blood. He says, this is going to hurt. This is going to be painful for me, but you are worth it. You are loved. You are valued. You are appreciated. You belong. You are redeemed. You are restored. You are renewed. You have been rescued.